Hey, welcome to the Art Condition Podcast, a weekly show that will discuss the business, community, and often undiscussed stress and mental health concerns of being a professional artist, or even a serious hobbyist. I'm Joby. I've been in the tattoo and illustration professions for 25 years. My co-host is Moose, a data analyst, social media manager, and art agent. If you enjoy the content, please consider visiting the Patreon page in the show notes to help support the effort. Or if that's not an option, please like, subscribe, leave a good review, or just share with your friends. And definitely go visit the links of our guests on this episode. Thanks for listening, and have a great day. Hey, welcome to the episode. Today we're talking to Sam Fraser, an Australian artist who offers a lot of valuable insight for artists to improve their salesmanship. Sam spent a number of years working in retail and has a goldmine of information to offer in do's and don'ts of selling your art. We talk about the art of soft skills, what they are, and how artists need to learn them and practice them like any other skill. We discuss the fine points of good communication and negotiating a fair price, both with private clients for commissions as well as bigger corporate clients. How artists can more effectively interact with clients to make the experience enjoyable for everyone and ensure repeat business. We also talk about the importance of a dialogue between artists that live in advanced Western countries with high standards of living and artists who live in developing countries or those with lower standards of living. There's a whole lot more, so without any more delay, here's the interview. We had an arm wrestling match, me and Moose, for who was going to take control of the questions this week. And Moose won.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's only fair that Moose do the proper introduction as well.
All right, Sam, thank you very much for joining us on the Art Condition Holiday Special, the first ever. So I know you, and Joby knows you a little bit, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the rest of the fine people that we have joining us today.
I'm Sam J. Fraser, as formerly known on Twitch. I'm dressed in a suit because of reasons. I'm an artist, a digital artist, and also a projection artist here in Melbourne, Australia. What is there to know about me? Not much. I'm a bit of just a regular old working artist, and I do a bunch of other work as well, not involved with art, and some other involved in art. But yeah, I'm a big fan of like safe spaces and community spaces that are really accepting of a lot of different types of people with different types of accessibility. And yeah, I just like to have a good time. That's pretty much it. That is me in a nutshell, I reckon.
What work did you do prior to becoming an artist?
I did. So, and this is probably why we're like leading into this conversation is I've worked in retail, like high-end retail for about 12 or so years, and also customer service. And as well as that, I've done about 5 or 6 years in youth work and some work in disability support as well. So a lot of work focused around talking to people, you know, having communications with people, clients, professional, non-professional. Probably, yeah. I think it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago when I decided to do art in some sort of career aspect. I think I've already always done art, as most artists will probably say, but never really cared for it in terms of like a professional kind of career until I was just overworking in all of those other jobs, or especially the retail job. But yeah, I think those are the main ones. A lot of customer service, a lot of retail, a lot of generic jobs like you would find yourself coming out of high school or young education, went to university, didn't like it, tried to learn more art, didn't like it, stayed in those jobs, and then eventually was like, oh, well, let's do this. Why not?
So why not was the reason why you switched into an art career?
Well, actually, My mother was the reason I switched into an art career, actually, because I was living with her at the time. I'd like gone and moved back with her for a few months as I was like in between houses, and she'd always been very instilled in my brain, have a backup, make sure you're getting a good solid income, make sure you've got some sort of, you're really good at this job, you may not like it. And this is high-end retail, and I sell suits, which is why I have a suit. But I think once she'd live with me for a little bit, she'd notice I would sit down and draw a lot, and just like draw a lot and spend a lot of time on art. And she'd see how it would make me kind of feel and what I'd talk about when she was around a bit more. And I think I was lining up because I've always been a computer nerd as well. I was lining up to do a networking education. So I was doing like Cisco stuff. Like I'm sure a lot of other people know about it. It's just like nerdy networking stuff where you can get into a job and you get paid a pretty good amount of money and you learn some interesting things. And it's a lot about problem solving, which is something that I find really satisfying. And we were literally sitting there on the couch as we were like going through the different sorts of education I'd need to get a different sort of job. She's just like, why don't you just try art for a bit? Why don't you just see how it goes? Like, you work so hard at it. Like, if you're going to keep working hard at it, something's going to stick, I guess, and you'll find your way, you'll find your footing, and, you've got support. I was very lucky to have a lot of, support. Not a lot, but definitely a lot of like family support. Not necessarily monetarily, but just guidance. And I took that. Having my mum say that to me, it's like someone who's so get a good income, be stable, and like my other I have two siblings, and they're very much like that. Having her say that really kind of had a big impact on me. Going, all right, I could probably do this, and that made a pretty big difference, I think.
But you weren't starting totally fresh with art, because one, you did have the art experience from just a lifetime of drawing, but you also now had experience from your industry experience as a in the sales industry. So
Yeah,
and that was part of why we wanted to get you on here, because you have a extensive background in something that a lot of
mhm.
artists are totally vacant on, I guess this would be the best word.
That's the
Where
kind word.
they're starting from scratch, trying to figure out the hard stuff that you now have
Yeah,
a wealth of information on.
yeah,
So
and I think that that gave me a big advantage. Like, I felt like since the start that has given me a really big advantage. Like, my art skill may be here, but because of my sales pitch, I can fudge it up to here. And I had actually one of my first ever commissions was I was working in a retail store across the road from this coffee shop. And I'd sit there for hours and do nothing because no one would ever come into this store. It's one of those boutique stores where you get two customers a day and you sell them thousands of dollars because they have way too much. And I was on my break at the coffee shop, and one of the residents who lived near there, we'd become friends. And he saw me drawing on my pencil and paper lots, and he's like, "Oh, could I get you to like? I'm a part of this pirate club. Could I give you some portraits and you can turn me into a pirate? I like want this really like regal pirate, yeah, kind of portrait." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I charged him way too little, like way too little. But I was pretty hyped. I was like, "Yeah, okay, this is my first of it." And he ended up getting like 3 or 4 in the end. Um, and he said to me, he looked at it and he was like, "Whoa, this is awesome." And I've always been very objective, and whilst not being too harsh on myself, but being like, "Hey, I know where my skills are at. This is not that awesome." But he said, "You got to understand, like, people who aren't artists see this and think it's magic, like literally think it's magic." And that stuck with me. And I was like, it's true. Like, I've also put a lot of hours into this in my past, and I might not have put in a lot of professional hours and full time into study and stuff like that at that point. I was watching a lot of John Derek Murphy on Twitch and learning a lot through him. Yeah, that's how Moose and I met. Maybe I think it is, isn't it? Kind of. Yeah, here or there. But yeah, put in. I hadn't put in that much hours, but yeah, he was genuinely like impressed by it and really happy with it, and he went and bought another one. And that statement of him saying like it's like magic really stuck with me, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I go and sell these really high end suits and they cost a lot of money, but there's also a customer base for these like lower end suits which fulfill their purposes. And if I'm making this lower end product, it's still a product that can be sold and delivered to a customer. It might be as of lesser price at the moment, but like when I get higher skilled, I'll bump up the prices and sell them for like that higher skill pay. And that really kept me going, being like, oh yeah, I can just make money as I do this, as I get better. Like the clientele will change, but you know, I will evolve and my payslip for it will evolve too. And that kept me like really motivated, and that's what really stuck with me, like, oh, so as long as I'm pitching this product or this service at this point and this price range to this customer, then I just change that pitch as my skills change. And that really, really helps, I think.
Right. So you have regardless what product you're making, you have the ability to sell it.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
When we were talking about having this episode, you had mentioned the word soft skills, and I went to Google because I don't know what soft skills are. And
I just pretended like I knew what that was.
I had assumed it was just communication in emails. That's what I thought, and that's part of it. But so the ones I found were like communication with clients, networking with your peers, which surprised me a little bit, but that makes sense. Time management, also surprising, but makes sense. Conflict resolution, and also hard selling and upselling. Which of those do you think are like the most important for artists to learn? Like if you had to prioritize them.
I think communication with your client is probably number one. Number two would be networking with your peers, for sure. Because in this industry, you know, we tend to look out for each other, and you get work through other peers as well who can't kind of complete it themselves, and that's kind of how you get your stuff out there. I mean, if you're on Twitter or Instagram or whatever kind of platform you use, even locally, and you know, we talk a lot about, I think, social medias, but even locally, these like things are really important. Whatever platform you're using to spread yourself, the best person who's going to help you first is going to be another artist, or someone in the industry, because they're going to be, oh, I know this person who's going to be able to do it. Sure. And that's you, whether or not they're an artist, but they're the link to the work. So that's probably number two for sure. And the reason I put the communication with customers or clients first is because they're like, if they pass them on to you, you want to be able to like fulfill that recommendation. And so however you get your clients, if you can communicate to them really well and effectively, then you're going to keep them, and they're going to turn into a network for you, because clients are the best type of network, like the absolute best type of network, like without a doubt. And
yeah,
also,
when we had Brian on, he said like the best marketing is customers, prior customers, because they'll a recommendation from a prior customer means a whole lot more than whatever ad you can come up with.
And adversely as well, like something we learn really early in the sales kind of career, especially like high-end sales, is your negative experience as a customer is going to be shared 2 to 3 more times more likely than your positive experience. So your negative review is going to be like, oh, look, I went to the shops and I bought this t-shirt and the rep was just on their phone the entire time, just not even looking at me. And then they put the price in wrong and I had to do this. Like, you're going to talk about that because people like to complain. People just really like to complain and be like, my life's terrible. And like avoiding that is really good. And it's not like, I don't think that's very prevalent in that kind of art industry, especially because people are already coming to you going like, wow, what you do is awesome. And you'd have to try really hard to give them a bad taste, but it happens. There are artists out there who definitely give people negative kind of experiences. And
But we don't have a Yelp for artists, right?
no,
God forbid.
no. Yeah, please, God forbid. That would be terrible.
Well, I think
Do
the
not
Yelp
ever do
for
that.
I think the Yelp for artists is like, you know, the network that's immediately above the working artist, like
Mhm.
art directors and, you know, like all the higher ups, so to speak. Because if
Yeah.
you're dealing with private commissions, I'm sure you can get away with a lot. But I mean, you hear way more about crappy clients when it comes to private commissions than you do like crappy artists. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Artists are
Yes.
like, we're so sensitive. It's like we don't have the energy to be too belligerent.
Yeah, and that's a really good base to start from as a salesperson. Like, as a salesperson in retail, you start as a lying, thieving con artist, and your goal is to change that into a trusting person.
So
Like,
let me
someone who
interrupt you
trusts-
right
yeah, go
there,
ahead.
because that's something that artists are going to have a hard time with, is getting comfortable with like their well, I don't want to say getting comfortable with their sleazy side, because artists are generally I mean, they have a lot in common with like software engineers in terms of like not being very outgoing, or you know, so learning these kinds of skills and getting comfortable with trying to sell themselves as well as their product is going to be tricky. So with that in mind, somebody that doesn't have the type of background that you do, and perhaps some of the disposition that you do, is there something that you can say about how people can try and get a little bit more comfortable with that, or how they might go about learning some of those skills? I know that's a whole podcast in itself, but is there some like highlights that you could hit for us?
Absolutely. I think number one is like, start being a little bit more honest with yourself and what you're capable of. Like, we all have that looming, what do we call it? Doubt, I guess. There's that
Imposter
we
syndrome.
don't believe imposter syndrome. There you go. Thank you. We all have that imposter syndrome as artists, like, and some worse than others. But being realistic, and like, I really mean being realistic about what you're capable of, especially when I said before, you know, other people see it as magic. Like, that is the truth, and that's not something ridiculous to understand. You can use a different industry to, like, you go as a plumber, like, I would not dare touch the taps under my sink. And I look at the plumber come in and be like, I'm like stressed out. This water's clogged up. Like, who knows? I've probably done something disastrous. It's going to cost $1 bajillion. And they come in for like 20 minutes and they go, yeah, it's fixed. It's all done. And you're like, how did he do that? How? That's amazing. But
Or
like,
even just a
that's
cell
the
phone.
same.
How do cell phones
Yeah.
work? They're magic.
Yeah, exactly. But if you break it down and you're the expert in that field, you understand either a part of it or much more than the user. And taking that knowledge, you don't have to explain it to the customer. Like, keep that magic to yourself in some respect. You can explain some parts, but that's not a part of it. Or at least explain the parts that you think are beneficial to the customer. The first step is, once you're realistic about what you can accomplish with your own set of skills, then you need to be honest about it and forthright about it. Because if you speak from clear honesty, if you don't know how to do sales pitches, once you're coming across honestly, that is a sales pitch in itself. that is probably the most effective sales pitch that you can ever have, is being like, I can do this. And if you're saying I can do this because you know you can do it, the person on the other end, if they have doubts, they're instantly going to be, squashed somewhat, whether or not that's their ability, kind of, but they're going to be calmed by the fact that you've just spoken completely honestly. And that is the best starting ground, because one, they already believe you because they've seen your art. So there's no point backtracking and giving them doubt. So start with the ground that, like, you almost have no doubt in your ability to perform what they're asking. If they've come to you, they've seen your stuff, they know you're capable. Cool. I know that. Let's put that on the checklist. Let's go. Oh, am I able to do this in time? That's different. Am I able to do this in the required time or the required ability? Like, does this person actually know what they're asking for with ridiculous requests? Blah, blah, blah. That's not a part of your sales pitch yet. Your first thing is like, yep, I'm capable. And that's how you talk. Like, that's how you address them, and addressing that with positivity as well affirms that. And I think also another one, like really early on in the sales kind of world, you learn this kind of neat trick on, and it goes like hand in hand, is getting people to say yes, like 3 times is the magic number that they say. Getting people to just agree and not like avoid the disagreement is really good. It affirms that you're on the same page. It affirms that you know what you're talking about. It becomes a positive communication. You can have no's in there and disagreement, and that's fine. How you handle those is a bit different. But yeah, just having people say yes lots. Like, ask, say things to be like, so, like, just parrot back to them. So you need this done by mid-December because it's for Christmas. Yes. Awesome. Oh, okay, so you see them, I want this portrait of my pet. Cool, your dog is called this, right? Yes. What's such a cute dog, hey? Yes. Like,
It's a
that
corgi.
kind of conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, even simple things like that. Obviously, don't be way too simple, but
The sky
acknowledging
is
that
blue.
you are listening to them. Sorry, what was that?
The sky is blue.
The sky is blue. That's a bit of a... Come on, you should know that one. That's a different podcast, actually. But yeah, just getting on the same page, because everybody just wants to be listened to and heard and understood. And
Yes.
there you go. That just creates a really positive environment. And it really works. It really, really works. And you don't need to continue that throughout the whole thing. That's just kind of like your opening. Hey, agree. That's great. That's really helpful. Cool. You're on the same page. They think you're listening. They have trust in you. Gaining that trust is like this, You can also lose that trust. But you want to gain that initial trust. And trust is really good because it affirms your professionality. And you think, like, one thing I'm thinking about is a lot of big companies have this in there, like, they might sell a product that's completely detached from human interaction, but you go down the line and the way you get that product is by talking to someone on the phone or by meeting a sales clerk or, by emailing someone. So you've always got those people and those skills, and you're interacting with those kinds of people on a day-to-day basis, and you can kind of look at what you do as a person, even as an artist, of like how you make purchases or how you interact with people, and look at what they're saying and steal what they're saying. If you've gone and like, sweet, I bought this awesome thing from a local store, remember that interaction, why you had a good positive interaction, and then steal from that. Like, take the clues that, like, why was that positive to you, and then try and reflect that in the things you're doing as well, because there is no direct formula on like how to be a good salesperson. there is a lot of people will try and tell you and teach you how to do that and teach you scripts. And those scripts are really, I think, are like guidelines. But the main thing is believe what you're saying and believe that you know what you're talking about and express that to them in a positive way whilst listening to them. Because they have something, they have a problem they need solved. You're that solution. Be a good solution. Be a really good solution for them.
If there are
So,
people, oh, sorry,
go ahead.
can I just real quick? If there are people that are feeling sketchy about like scripts or whatever, because that's actually a great idea. And there's a parallel, I think, in art, because it is a new skill that you're learning. And I think just as in when people are trying to learn or strengthen their artistic skills, they'll do studies, and they'll even do tracings of, masterworks, or works that they really admire in order to learn how the thing is put together. So it's kind of the same thing, like what you're talking about. From what I gather, you get a script, or you mimic an interaction that you had in an effort to strengthen those muscles that you may not feel are as strong for yourself.
And that's where you get into like those further points of hard selling and upselling, is that if you follow the script to the T, you'll probably hit 1 and 2 pretty well, and you'll get about 50 to 60% of your success and of that client or that kind of situation. If you like, it's like when you go to, and I'm using retail a lot because a lot of us have like been to stores or whatever, and that's my kind of background. I can hear when a salesperson is quite new because they're doing the, "Hi, how are you going? Oh, that's fantastic. Would you like a tie with this shirt?" And it works to an extent, but you don't build as much trust. Like you're just doing the part. And so when you start using those skills, or like not exactly, at the start of an artist, you might reference that study and just try and do a perfect match to it. And I think James Gurney is one of the artists that says, I think it's James Gurney. He's like, evolve the study, or like build upon the study, make it into something of your own and try and learn from it, because there's much more to that study than just the image you see in front of you. So your goal sometimes is, okay, I've got this portrait reference. I'm going to copy that portrait reference, and then I'm going to like amplify it with my skills and like learn a lot about it and like push it up, make it better than the reference. And that's the same thing with your sales techniques, is that, you learn these scripts and you can push those scripts out there. It's not going to make a lasting experience. It may work somewhat, and it's a good base, but you want to make that conversation your own. That's why I say the scripts are there as a good fundamental, but really take them and make them about who you are. Like that's the thing about sales is, yes, you're selling yourself and your own service, but you want to make it your own. You don't want to turn into someone else, because then it won't reflect your personality and it won't come across as genuine. So you take that and go, okay, I understand these points. I understand this is a point where, you might say in an email, one of the big ones is, what's your budget? They might ask for a price, and you go, your script is, what's your budget? Instead, or I don't really work off of direct prices. What's your budget? And so that's the staple. There are 50 different ways to say that. And the best way to say it for that customer is how you read that customer. It's not, this is the best words for this exact email. It's, what's your prior conversation been with that customer, and what can you pick up on how to approach that question? And that's where you really start getting into, oh, this person cares about the product that they're going to give me or the service that they're going to give me, and just actually wants to know, like, how can they get the best out of the money I have available. Otherwise, if you go, what's your budget? People are going to come back and be, maybe like 5 times out of 10, they'll come back and be like, well, how much does the thing charge? And then you have that like table tennis match. And it's like, well, what's your budget? Oh, how's much charge? Oh, it's about this. And you kind of want to avoid that. You kind of want it done in like 2 emails or 3 emails, whatever. So picking up on the fact that they might, picking up on the fact that they might say things. Is this going to mess up our order?
No, he comes right back. Sorry, I thought you were aware of that.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I really tried to help you about that advance, but forgot
now
to.
I'm Moose. I think picking up on what they're asking and what sort of person they are, if they're really direct, if they're more emotionally kind of involved in their way they communicate, and reciprocating that. Get on their level. What are they vibing off? Jump on their level. Someone might be really excited and chuck a bunch of emoticons in their chat. Then be that. Don't be a robot. Like,
So
be
exclamation
yourself.
points.
Yeah, like a smiley face. Hey, how's it going? Don't write
All caps.
warmest regards, Samuel Fraser, and then the headings there, and it's all perfectly laid out and everything. It's have a nice holidays. See you later. Or if they are that, to that point, be professional, be concise, be clear. Getting on their level is a really great way to kind of judge how you're going to speak to someone. And if you can, it just adds to that, like, formality for them, makes them feel comfortable, makes you feel comfortable, sells yourself.
All right, so I think this ties into another question I had. Let's say that you're an artist and you're not getting a whole lot of commission inquiries. How can you maximize the amount of budget that a client will provide you if you need to maximize every time someone contacts you?
Yeah, that's kind of going into that, having a conversation about what they need. What is it that they really want? Because someone might come to you with you don't know how much money someone has. And that's also something you learn in the sales industry. Like, you never assume how much dollars someone has in their pocket or how much they think something is valued at. You have no idea what their life is like. And that is something you need to remember from the get-go. Which is why people say, like, don't undercharge, because you might be missing out on funds, right? But realistically, what you're saying is, I offer this one product and it costs this exact amount of money. And that's not a fun experience for anyone. Like, it satisfies the job, but it doesn't leave lasting impressions. It doesn't promote more like return customers. So what you really want to do first is find out what they want. What's the like it's art, it's part of entertainment, and so people have a strong connection to it and can attach a lot to it. Especially if you do like pet portraits. Pet portraits are fantastic, or just portraits in general are fantastic, because there's a lot of emotional connection to those things. And so usually the first thing is to be realistic and be like, oh, this is an adorable pet. Like, find out a little bit more of that background without being obviously too creepy, in a sense where you're like trying to find about their personal history. Let them judge how much information they give you, but finding out what they would really like from this. They might want a pet portrait, and because their pet's passed away recently. Asking questions like, what sort of cat was Toby like? Too close for you, Joey? What sort of cat was Toby like? They look a bit sneaky. Like, I don't know. show me your favorite photos of your cat, and why are they your favorite photos of your cat? And then when they give you that information back and they go, oh, Toby was such a sweet cat and loved to lay on my lap, then you go, okay, so we could just do a straight portrait, but like maybe we try and make Toby look really charming and sweet. So we put Toby on a cushion instead, and Toby's kind of like half asleep. Do you have any photos like that? And then you've got them excited and interested in this engagement, invested in this engagement. So once you found out like what you can really do with it, you now have this ability where you're going to sell a product to them that is much greater than their initial expectation. And so you've added value to it, like a lot of value. And that's where you kind of like can increase your price. And like even at this point, you might not have to, it's best if you've not discussed price. And then at that point, I guess you can start discussing price, and that's like a whole another bandwagon. But increasing the value of what you're going to deliver, if you don't get a lot of commissions, and you want to, like really make a solid buck from that commission, it's going to help, because then this person's going to invest their dollars into you.
So a similar issue arises here, where clients typically, personal clients typically don't have a good idea of how much work they're asking you to do, so they don't know how much they're to expect something to cost. So they might think $50 is a lot of money, because that's like, what, 10 dinners. So they can come to you expecting to pay $50, and then you say, well, what's your budget? And then they say $50, and you're like, well, I can't. How does this work? Like, where you are expecting to try to get a whole lot more, where you need to charge more in order to make it worth your while. How do you break this down with a client if they're either not willing to pay very much, or alternatively in another situation where they're not able to pay very much?
Well, I guess like there's a few things to that factor, and one is going to be obviously avoiding that. That's why I don't particularly love the what is your budget to start off with, and that's why I'd go for the find the value first, have that conversation around the value, because at that point they start to forget about the price. They usually start off with the price. You don't have to, if someone asks you a price, you do not have to answer them straight away. Like, you do not have to respond with an answer to that. You can respond with changing the conversation to the actual piece of art and act as if, oh, like, is this just a regular portrait, or, what's special about this cat? What's special about this thing that I'm doing? So you avoid that conversation, you start adding the value, you start creating a trust and friendship, and, friendship, I say, professional friendship, I guess, is the best way to put it. You start adding the value on top, you change the subject. If they bring it back and they really, really want to know, then you can take that as almost a tell of, okay, their budget's not going to be too high. Don't obviously assume, but if they are asking about price a lot, that's going to be like a realistic thing. But you've already done a little bit more work there, so they're already going to be more honest with you about the actual budget, not how much they want to spend. And I guess you also need to take into account, like, how much is this worth to you? And I guess when you're having that conversation, you actually have some sway on how the image will look in the end, and you can now direct the image to something that you're more capable of doing. Because if someone goes, I want my 6 cats playing with each other and fighting each other and doing this thing, and in the background it's my living room, and you're like, fuck, perspective, multiple figures, this and that, that's like thousands of dollars we're talking. So starting to navigate their conversation about what they really care about getting out of this piece, not the image they're describing to you, because usually the clients will give you a terrible idea anyway. Like, because they're not visually inept most of the time. They're someone who just has an idea, and realistically, that's their first idea. And they're not usually sold on it as well. So you don't have to do what they say unless you're doing like professional work from a corporate company and you're doing something different. But this is private commissions. They're probably not sold on their own idea, and they probably want your input anyway. Otherwise, they're just using you as a service, and you charge them. You say this is if they don't want any part of this conversation as well, you go, all right, it costs this much amount, and you say how much it costs, and you be really straightforward with them, and they might get back to you, and they might not, and that's just a part of that world. And you don't really want those clients heaps anyway. You sometimes might want them every now and again, and that's that Joby is 100% I've printed this thing off the internet. Can you tattoo it on my body? And you go, sweet. I know it's gonna take me 2 hours, so this is my hour per rate for this kind of shit. So sorry, this kind of stuff. So I'm gonna do it for this much.
Cursing is encouraged. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, don't say that. That's dangerous. So I know it's gonna cost this, and like every tattoo artist hates that work. I imagine there's probably not a lot of people who want to do that work. And
sometimes it's nice.
I'm booked out.
Sometimes it's nice.
Sometimes it's nice.
We call them pork chops for a reason.
Yeah. Funny story. When I got my tattoos done, the tattoo artist, I designed my own tattoos, and the tattoo artist said, "Yeah, most other tattoo artists wouldn't have taken this job." And I was like, "Oh." I kind of took offense to that, but I was also kind of scared that he wasn't enjoying it or wasn't going to do a good job. But it turned out fine.
Yeah, and that's
number one thing not to say to a client.
Yeah, that's not a great way to sell yourself. Like, that is probably the worst way. But coming from a tattoo artist, it's like, yeah, I can kind of expect some of that too, because there's ego there sometimes, and that happens with artists too.
And the work was already done at that point, so.
Was it? Wow. Wow. Yeah, I think yeah, you're gonna have those jobs, and I think just being realistic about yes and no, but I feel like that happens so infrequently to me. That happens like the moment I ask a question, and that for me in retail is I want to buy a tie, I want to buy a shirt, and this is what I want. And I'll say 8 out of 10 times, I don't sell them just that shirt or tie. I sell them a shirt and a tie, and I give them some lasting advice as well. You can always do that too with those clients, and be extra, even if you're just giving the product as well, because then you're also leaving a lasting impression on them, and they're probably going to come back to you again. Because people like that are actually okay in terms of repeat services, because they don't want to go through another person and have another conversation. Next year, they'll come right back to you and be like, all right, now I need my grandma painted. And you're like, sweet, my prices have gone up a little bit. Here's $50 more. And then, they're like, whatever, I know it's easy. Bang, done. Repeat work, fantastic. They're probably going to say to their cousin or their sister or brother that you do this, and then they might be a little bit different as well. So you can still have a positive influence on that customer as well, and build them up to get yourself future value on top of that.
So for, I think we touched on this briefly, but just to expand on it, for customers that are looking for D&D party character commissions, it's not uncommon for them to look for 5 to 15 characters in a commission, and they're going in thinking that's going to be $100 total. And obviously that's not feasible for anybody at any level of work to do for $100. But is there any way to salvage that? Like, how would you go about? Would you try to get them to increase their budget? Would you decrease the amount of work? What would your approach be?
Explaining. That's when you kind of start to go into a little bit of your practice and explain what's actually going on. A good way to start that is going like, can you show me some examples of images of what you'd like? Like, can you like do a bit of a Google search and show me some, like, where did you get this idea? Like, what art did you see? And you'll be able to look at that art that they send you and be like, that probably cost $1,500. And you can relay that information to them. Like, okay, so something about this is actually a very high level of art that most artists will charge $800 to $1,500 for. I don't know if that's in your budget. If it is, great, we can do that. It's going to take this amount of time. And like that's that kind of conversation, regardless of if you know their budget yet, you should still affirm that you're capable of doing that, because it affirms your professionalism as well. Go, yep, that's fine. If you want to do that, if that's a bit outside your budget, we can work on ways, or if that's outside your budget, we can work ways to kind of navigate to get something that you want and achieve what you need within your budget. So let's talk about your budget realistically, and then let's try and find a solution for you. And you might offer them some solutions and go, all right, so I'm going to do some line art with flat colors instead of fully rendered, and that's something a bit more closer. You bring their stuff up, because that line art flat color stuff is still magic to them. They don't really know the difference between rendered image and line art flat colored unless you show it to them then and there like this. And they probably still think, that's sweet. Oh yeah, I'll get one of those still. Like, you're not underselling them that much. You might go, oh my God, that's like 15 hours less of work or 25 hours less of work. But you're still giving them something to satisfy what they need. You're being professional, and they're like now starting to understand how the process works. And if they respond to you negatively and harshly, you are able to drop that client and just go, like, just get rid of them. If that budget is way too low for you and the amount of work that they're asking for, and they're treating you poorly in that respect, there's plenty of other people out there. You're not missing out on an opportunity. Like, you are not missing out on an opportunity to make money if you let that customer go. But responding to them in those ways and still being on their ballpark and being like, this costs this much money and I'm capable of doing that. Search your professionalism, goes, okay, this person knows what they're talking about, but they're still willing to work with me. Cool. Oh, that's awesome. Like, that's really great. Showing more examples of what is more capable in their budget. Even if you have to pull from other people, you can achieve as well. You don't have to have directly work in your own portfolio to show that. A lot of people, I think they do, but you don't. You can just grab stuff off like other artists. What you're capable of achieving. So just express that to them. Sure.
So a lot of artists, a lot of artists in the commission, the private commission world, have price sheets where it's sort of a breakdown. What you were just saying, a client isn't going to know the difference between line art and then cell shaded line art and blah, blah, blah. So it's a menu of, this is what X, Y, and Z looks like, and this is how much it costs. You're kind of detonating that whole concept, for me anyway, of price sheets. Like, it's sort of like I can still see some place for them, but now it's like I'm less inclined to just send people a price sheet straight away. Is that, I don't know. What are your thoughts on price sheets?
I think your price sheet is your mass market. Like, if you're a hardworking artist who is able to like find that right price in your price sheet that is actually valuable for what you do, and you sell a product this is what the product is, and you're happy with doing that. I am not happy with doing that myself. That would drive me absolutely insane to do the same product over and over again with a different twist to it, like a tiny little different twist to it. I could not be more exhausted than doing the same thing over and over again. A price sheet might be good for yourself internally as an artist, I feel, and a lot of people do it, but I don't know. I'm quite against like making it. Like, I don't know, because I just feel like you're setting yourself up to lose the value that you probably could get. And you're setting yourself up to be treated as a service and not as an individual. And those two things go against how I like to be treated myself, or how I think artists should be treated for what they do. As I said, we sell magic, essentially. And there's no point in packaging that in plastic wrap and putting it on the discount bin store. Because also, like, one other thing we do, like in retail, like you go, well, Sam, you sell suits and they're priced at this much money. We sell probably 30% of our product at full price. And then I reckon 60% of it or 50% of it at a discounted rate. And then the other 20 to 10% is just not sold at all, right? And so the way you work around that, because that's price sheets in the retail world, the way you work around that is you add value, you add on, you upsell, and you do hard selling. Is one of the soft skills I tend to avoid, in a sense, because it's kind of like that. That is hard selling. Hard selling is your price sheets. It's like, this is how much it costs, and this is what it is, and this is the contract, and that's the timeline. It doesn't promote positive experiences all the time. So your goal is to try to squeeze out more value. And if you have a determined price, then you're stuck in a loop of producing this art for this amount of time. You have the price sheet up, and you don't promote growth of yourself as an artist or yourself as a business. You promote yourself as a service that is now not expected to change. And if your price sheets goes up, you change your clientele completely almost, or only a fraction of your clientele will move with you into a higher price point. I think that's pretty important.
The only reason I can recommend the people I recommend price sheets to are the people who are getting inundated with requests. Steve, for example, one day got 30 requests, all because of one post on Instagram. So none of them actually hired him because he just sent the price sheet and it was out of their range. But if he had been trying to have a conversation with 30 people at the same time, I can't imagine being able to juggle that.
Yeah, that's fair. That is absolutely fair. That's a hard thing to deal with, I guess. Like, there's ways around that in some way, but you're always going to feel like lose some of those customers because you're not going to be able to pick up who needs to be responded to straight away. And you don't know all of their budgets, and you're responding to 30 people in one day. Like, you could do things like, I would just be straight up with them. Listen, from this post, I've gotten a stack of emails and stack of people. I'm happy to do what you want, but it's going to take me a few weeks to respond to you. Are you okay with that? And if they say no, like, your 25 are probably going to be like, yeah, that's fine. And then your 5 are going to be like, no, I need this ASAP. I'd respond to those people first and start that conversation with them first. A price sheet, like, that initial email or that initial response is pretty copy pasty. Like, you could copy paste that. You just write it once really well. You could copy paste that to the 30 people, right? And then you're not giving them a price. You're still sticking out of that conversation. And then you're just waiting on their response as well, because 25 people might respond, 5 are not okay, 5 are going to completely ignore you. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And that's going to happen anyway. Like, those customers are probably not going to stick with you even if you had the time to talk to them. If they're not willing to accept that answer, it's not going to, like, just get rid of them.
It's almost saying no in a different way. Like, that's, something that you've sort of reiterated a couple times now, is getting comfortable with saying no. And it's, I think that's like really important. I mean, I don't think that can be emphasized enough for artists who are often like, oh God, the famine mentality almost comes preloaded in the artist brain. And that if I don't grab every single one, then I'm going to be in the poorhouse next month. It's like, you have to learn to say no. And that's really important. I wanted to follow up what you were just saying though, in response to Moose's question about, just being inundated. Do you think that there's like a happy medium? Like, is it too corny to have, like, instead of like a price list, you still have something pre-written that you can, mass send out, but it's a little bit more personable and has a little bit more of a, personal touch as far as like talking. It's a little blurb on your website of how you work and what your personal approach is to things, almost specifically for that type of situation. And you can start alluding to price, but it's not, you're not getting in deep or whatever. It's almost like a little about me section, almost specifically for the purpose of opening a dialogue about price in a situation where you have to just get something out to a lot of people.
Well, if you are a type of artist who starts running into that, or you kind of expect it to happen because you're going to put out a character, you're going to put out like a character art or whatever, or a portrait, you never know which one's going to be super popular. But if you're feeling good about something, I mean, preempt yourself with that kind of conversation. Start that, like, build a form on the website with the about me. And then that form is not just somebody directly contacting you with, I need this done. In that form, you're like, tell me a bit about yourself, or tell me about the art you want to produce. Ask them questions already for them to start their response to, because then that one gets them thinking about the value as well. And it also gets them into the mindset that this is something a little bit more personable, something a little bit more like that they're going to have to put some effort in as well. And then, if you can like relay past work that you've done and give them a price range, maybe once or twice, if you feel like that's going to happen. I don't know. I still feel, as I'm not that type of artist, but I still feel like quite strongly against that, to be quite honest with you. Like, opening any point of price point for me is just something I always avoid, like in sales of anything, because they're going to come, like, they're going to ask about it anyway, and they're going to talk about it anyway, and you might as well talk about it like when it's appropriate, not before it's appropriate, because that is, once again, you might be either steering people off you could work for because they can't afford that kind of price range, but they still might be able to afford a price range that you are able to do work for them in. And as we said before, that's still really valuable. It turns into repeat clients. It's still a client you might want. And you might be steering away people who have, or not steering away, like not taking advantage of customers who can afford a higher end product and can pay more to like fulfill that income. So I don't know. If you do get inundated with requests, maybe it's a point to introduce some sort of like price barrier. I know a few artists who do like a lot of work and they just do a bunch of personal work all the time. And they barely take commissions and they just sell stuff online. And they sell a ton of art online, and they've got sold and the price is crossed out. And the prices are really varied between pieces. And that works super well for them, because then it gives them a low point and a high point of like what their work is going to cost between. And then you might still have people come in with a bit of work that's worth a lot more than that, and it's still valuable. You probably won't get anyone who's like under that minimum price point at all. You'll be getting people at that minimum and above, and that might work.
Just to be clear, you're talking about also changing the scope of the project as well as changing the price. So you're not going to do $100 work for a giant thing and then $1,000 for the same thing.
No.
Okay.
No, I think that's bad practice. I think that's being a con man or a con person. I think that is bad practice as a business in general.
Yeah, that's worth stating, because there was some debate in the chat as to whether or not there was a place for charging variable rates. But the key to variable rates is variable product. It's not variable rates for the same product. You have to delineate, what it is that you're doing for the appropriate amount of.
I mean, you might, like, this is the thing, is your product, like, this is why it's like, it's also a service. You might draw a picture of a cat. I'm right now I'm drawing lots of cats. I just like need to, that's what's on my head. You might draw a picture of a cat and you charge someone $200, and then you might draw a picture of a cat and you charge someone $400, and they might be similar-ish, but they're never going to be two of the same images. And also, like, one client might be like, yes, great, here you go. And another client might be like, 20 emails later. That is a service that they have to charge for. The image might be the same or similar type, but if they're making you take 20 emails to sort out this thing, you charge them for that. Like, that is something. That's why you don't go this. That's why I feel like if you go yes to that exact price on a price list, you are signing yourself also up for like some awful amount of email time for people who are not worth it. And you should charge that admin fee. You should charge the fees that your hardware costs. You should charge the insurance. You should charge the time. If something needs to be done in this amount of time and it's the same image, you have to charge more because you're going to spend more direct time on it then and there, and it's going to push other work away. So you need to bring value for that. Like, you're not just charging for the image that you're spitting out, you're charging for the service and the professionalism. That's why a lot of people go, you've also studied for 8 years. Sure, but you also got to get up and write these bloody emails every day, and you've got to get up and talk to this pain in the butt customer. And if they are a pain in the butt, charge them for being a pain in the butt because you're spending more time working with them. And that is still time on the service that they're paying for. It's not the time when your pen is to paper. It's the time when you're talking to them, thinking about the product, convincing them that this is the direction you want to go ahead. If they want to see a sketch, sometimes as artists, we know sketches aren't always like the thing that you want to do or necessarily need to do to produce a piece of art. Sometimes if you've got an idea in your head and your process is bang, 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 you don't need to put a sketch out. But if someone demands a sketch, then you charge them for it. Like, your service is, as an entertainment worker in any respect, your service is never going to be exactly the same every single experience you have, like even if you have a price sheet. And so allowing for that and putting that in the price is just reasonable to me.
So with all of these things being factored into your any commission that you do, is it reasonable to have a minimum amount of payment that you would accept for any?
I think so. I kind of do. I think, yeah, that minimum has gone up over the last years. It used to be like $100. I'd be like, yep, not doing anything, even a stick figure for less than that. But yeah, I think you need to have a minimum just because, yeah, I think you're going to invest a certain amount of time. And like one of the big things is like, you need to be able to ensure for them that you're going to be able to get it done. And that has a minimum cost, because if your hardware fails or your software fails, you need to be able to replace that almost immediately, or at least find a replacement. And that should be about your minimum. Like, your thought is, okay, I'm working on like 5 products at the moment. If all of these 5 products are above this minimum, then I know at any point if my hardware fails, I can get it repaired because it's going to cost roughly this much money. And that's an insurance. Like, that's an insurance on yourself and the customer. And you can choose to express that or not if you need to. I don't think it's that necessary, but it's there for yourself and peace of mind. If you only get one commission at a time, your minimum might be a little bit higher, or think about what sort of backups you have in case like it does fail, and like what you'd need to be able to like replace that. You might need to go out and get a Wacom sketch pad, which costs like $50 to $100 or whatever they cost just to get it done. Like, that's a really basic insurance, and that's going to cost $50 to $100. And you're also going to have to pay for your Photoshop subscription. So you add that on, and they're like, that's a kind of good minimum. Like, wouldn't do anything less than that. Absolute less than that. Because that's just essentially that insurance. Because if you can't, then you're going to have to do a refund. And that's much worse than everything else. Like, and refunds are a part of our industry. Like, any type of service and product that we give, have a think about how you would approach a refund, because it's just as important as a sale as well.
I know many artists don't have a no refund policy. They have a deposit, 50% down up front, and then no refunds on that. And then after the product is completed, then you get receive the other 50% of the payment, and you send them the final result. And also that is non-refundable.
Yeah, well, that's a different type of refund I'm talking about. That's like the client-based refund is in terms of like, you've done your job and they want a refund. Oh well. I'm talking about if you can't complete your job and you need to give someone a refund because you have not fulfilled the service that you have promised them. Like, especially around birthdays and Christmases and stuff. Like, at the moment, my arm is so bad, as I've mentioned to you, Moose, and you probably heard about it. I've had a lot of struggles with my arm, and I've had to lower the amount of Christmas commissions I've taken, and I'm down to a couple. And I've discussed with these people, I'm like, what sort of timeline are we realistically looking at? Because I'm going through some health stuff that I can't complete your pieces in the amount of time that you think. The refund is also available there as well. None of them have taken it at all. But these are clients that I'm happy to express to them, I'm happy to give you a full refund if that makes you feel any better, because both of them are repeat clients. And that is also a part of the service. They're like, no, we don't want it. It's cool. Like, you got till end of Jan. And I'm like, all right, wicked. Like, I'll just take care of myself and make sure I can complete that thing. But I need to be aware that if I am not able to, because the uncertainty is still there at the moment, that I'm capable of giving them a refund. And you're not capable of giving someone a refund if you're not charging the right amount of money in the start. And that is like your minimums and stuff like that come into play. And it also is, I would never suggest a refund at any point until you really feel like you can't like complete the thing, and also judge it per person as well. Sometimes you don't even need to mention it, and you can just say, there might be a delay on this. Is that okay? For these reasons. You don't have to mention the word refund at all.
So there's also a bit of an extension here where I know some artists hate having any queue. They hate having like 10 people lined up and have 10 people waiting for their work. And there are other artists who have like a year's waiting line after they've been, a year's worth of commissions lined up. Is it wrong to have a large waiting list?
I think that's just like how you run your service, and if that's okay with the client. That's like mine are usually like a month or two, I guess, that I give, because then it allows, or sometimes 3 months, because then it allows for someone to come in if they need something completed really quickly, that I can do that for them. And I'm a personal fan of having a few things on the go, because it just keeps me more interested and I can jump between them. Yeah, I feel like that's just like your own personal way of how you want to deal with that. And as long as you're doing the initial sales pitch and people are kind of understanding of that, if you become an established artist who knows that there is a long wait time, a lot of people don't care about that. Like, they really don't care about it. And then they know that if they want something by a certain date, they might have to pay extra. And you're like, yep, cool. Like, if you don't budge on that timeline, you're probably going to lose sales, I guess, and customers if you have no budging on that. I don't think there should be any amount of guilt. I think you just need to be honest from the get-go, like how long something takes. And that's really easy, because you just go, when do you need this by? Like, when ideally do you need this by? Give me a ballpark. And if that doesn't fit in with your schedule, then you say, I could probably get it done by this date. Is that okay? If not, I might have to add a rush fee of this amount.
I know.
Have to add a rush fee.
I know many artists use a rush fee of 50% to skip to the front of the line.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, that's also like, this is why I think the only thing I do that is actually based on an exact value is pay 50% up front, or 50% on completion, or full upfront. That is the only real option I give for people. I just include that rush part, a part of the constraint. I see Jovi giggling here, and it's
I'm sorry
No,
to
we're
distract
just
you.
reacting to
Sorry.
Daria
how
in
dare.
chat.
I'm trying to avoid it. I'm like this.
You're better
like,
off.
Sam, you're a professional. You're professional today, Sam. I'm just trying to not dance. I'm trying not to do all the things that I usually do. No, I think I would just include that. Like, I think I say, because it needs to be done by this time, it might bring up the costs a little bit because I've got to rush it and push some other stuff back, and just be like, okay, like that to me is just going, yep, that makes sense. And then it's not like 50%. Oh, how much is that going to cost? I mean, they don't really need to know, I don't think. But I guess if you're getting that amount of like flow of work, I personally get like a lower flow of work and charge more because I find that's how I work.
Hey, thanks for listening. We continue this conversation in part 2. You can get there immediately by clicking the thumbnail image on the bottom left of this video. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a great day.